Hello and welcome to Entertainment of Excellence, the podcast where we talk about films, TV, all of it. Hi, I'm Ollie.
I'm Thom.
And I'm Ben.
And today we're talking about the 1975 film Mirror. This will contain spoilers.
Yeah, that sounds good. The refreshing taste of Coca-Cola.
Sponsored by Faulty Mic Stands.
So, this movie, I get the pleasure of giving a plot synopsis for Mirror. So what happens is, things happen. So I do actually know what happens. So this is told through a series of memories in kind of no particular order. There's 3 different time periods, right? No, 4, I don't know. There's different time periods.
There's 3 main ones.
Yeah, and we kind of morph in and out of them, and they're played by the same actors doing different characters.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's this very dreamlike moving between them, and then you slowly discover over the course of the film that it's a man recalling the events of his life and kind of feeling such weight of guilt on him that he just decides to die, I suppose. Not like he kills himself, he just gets really poorly. He gets a sick tummy because he's so guilty. And then I think he dies.
Good for
And
him.
that's basically the whole story, I think.
I'll warn listeners in advance that I apologise. I have a cold, so I might not talk very much, and my voice might sound a bit like croaky.
Yeah, Ben's been feeling the weight of guilt on his conscience.
I have.
Exactly. You're passing the burden over to us too.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of everyone I've hurt in my lifetime.
I thought you said passing the bird over to us, Ollie, and that would be very irrelevant because there seems to be quite a thing of birds in this film.
There is.
There's a bird that lands on the little boy's head who's doing army training.
Yeah.
Where he does a big prank. What did you think of the prank of throwing a grenade, getting everyone to dive onto the floor in fear for their lives, and then going, "It's just a prank grenade, bro."
I feel like that was really what invented 2005 YouTube.
Really?
It was.
Wow. You can see Tarkovsky was ahead of his time.
As always, a true visionary.
Yeah. And this is this is the thing that makes it visionary, is inventing pranks.
Of course.
For YouTube. And
Tarkovsky would have had a mad YouTube channel.
it would be so good.
He'd have
Casey
more
Neistat.
subscribers than us.
Really? I don't think so.
Really? So you want our viewers to go and subscribe to us so we can beat Tarkovsky?
Exactly.
Hypothetically.
Do you think Tarkovsky has an hour-long unedited shot?
Exactly.
No.
Didn't think so.
I mean, Stalker probably got close.
But yeah, probably. So anyway, the birds, there's actual symbolism within the birds. Seeing as we're talking about them, I know this is like right at the end of the film, but we may as well. So like the final shot is... No, it's not the final shot. Is it the final shot? I can't remember. It's one of the last
very
things.
final shot, but it's very...
No, the final shot is the people walking with the trees. Yeah. So the man, Alexei, he's kind of like looking after this bird, and then as he dies, he lets the bird off and go... And I really liked it. I thought it was very cool. As a big Blade Runner fan, I think any character letting off a bird as they die is very cool. And it was kind of, I don't know, it could have been the alleviation of his guilt. It could have been, even in his dying times, it's kind of like nursed this bird back to health and having new life, because there's a big theme of kind of time continuing on no matter what, but like in a sense of almost having immortality, which was cool, you know. And it was interesting because it took a while to figure out what was going on with the film. Because
yeah,
do you want to talk about the opening sequence, Ollie? Do you remember the boy?
Oh yeah, with the doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this film took me maybe about half an hour before I fully sort of grasped what it was doing and got into it. So it wasn't necessarily that it was. If anything, it was like not necessarily fast paced, but there was a lot of like cuts between different time frames and all that sort of stream of consciousness thing that I think is a lot different to some of the other Tarkovsky stuff I've seen. So I think it like took a while to fully immerse myself into the idea of what it was going for. But I think when I like latched onto it, it all like clicked together pretty well, and yeah, I did enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah.
I kind of had that same progression where to start with it was like, oh, what's happening? But as you say, about half an hour in, it kind of clicks. It's like, oh, well, yeah, it's obviously non-linear. It's very dreamlike. It's this guy sort of reflecting on parts of his life, and you've also got to intersperse with like newsreel footage and other things like that, which create a very mesmerizing effect.
And the mesmerizing effect was very effective
It
because there were times that like the tension would just build, and I couldn't explain why, but I was like so terrified. Like I think this is where it started to click early on for me. The point that it did was in one of the black and white bits where the wife/mother is like washing her hair in a basin, and her hair is like draped over so you can't see her face.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, I think it starts to slowly zoom out, and it's black and white, and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of on edge, and I don't know why. And then the music starts to play this like really tense rising thing, and you're like, oh, I don't like this. And then you see the house is like dripping with water, and you're like, oh, I don't like it.
Shining.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is, and that's where I started to understand the kind of dream-like memory aspect, and also then he says, I've start to imagine like my mother with your face.
Yeah,
and it starts to fall into place. And you're like, aha, I understand now.
I think that worked really well. It was very like a lot of his stuff visually dependent, and but so all the sort of tricks it did with the actors playing like different characters, I think all that definitely enhanced this feeling of disorientation. And although you can't put everything together neatly, that's kind of what it's going for, because it is meant to really embody this feeling of confusion and regret. And I think that, as you said, is done really, really effectively through just very brief sequences that, in the grand scheme of things, might not necessarily, you might be not exactly place it in the timeline or really understand fully its point, but it's almost that kind of is the point, because it's really meant to be this perplexing experience.
And each moment of it though is like, I really liked each one, opening with the start of the nurse like helping this boy with a stammer, and that like helps you get into the tension and the release of the scenes of what they're going for, where she's just like, all the tension in your hands, it's in your hands are so tense, they're immobile. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And then they're suddenly contrasted by like the scene after of these like beautiful colour shots of nature and this random like doctor guy coming along, and then there's, it's, you know, got that brief moment of levity where you can see them just vibing together and kind of having fun. We're sitting on the fence and it breaks. Classic. That's a classic moment of friendship. And then also that scene then sets up, I would say the first scene is supposed to be Tarkovsky being like, it's quite difficult to communicate what I'm going for here, because by showing someone who literally is having trouble communicating, but then it's kind of alleviated and you go into it, and then the next scene kind of sets up a lot of the themes, because the doctor says about that life is moving very fast, and sometimes we don't take time to just stop and reflect and appreciate, which is obviously a lot of what the film is doing, although it does in turn do it quite fast. And, you know, I think that I have also kind of have an extremely fast-paced like life in the way that I do stuff as well. So it was quite nice to have a film be like, chill, reflect, have a look at these cool things, and from that point on, I knew, I was like, oh, this is going to be a beautiful film, because every shot was so cool. Him, and also it's one of those films where it feels like everything was working for it as well. Whenever day they shot on, he was able to stand in a field and the wind blew in perfectly to send like ripples through all of the tall, whatever was growing, the tall grass and stuff. And it was like this amazing image of a man standing in a field, turned to the side from far away as you see this wind ripple through. And it was so cool.
See, when I first saw that, I thought it was intentional, and I was wondering how on earth they managed to get that. But it just looked so cool, and it was perfectly, like perpendicular to the view of the camera as well. So it kind of just comes in, and I don't know. It was really cool. That
there's loads of moments like that with. Actually, to be fair, there's lots of things they do with lighting, which is probably intentional because you can make it look like it's natural light. But yeah, it's great, and the torrential rain and stuff that's in a later scene. It was crazy. There's so many. There's almost too many good shots where I can't even remember which are the iconic ones.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many.
You definitely feel the craft and talent of Tarkovsky throughout, and I think that parallels quite nicely with some of the stuff we're shown. So I know you were saying it's sort of a cinematic poem in a sense, and there's a lot of kind of poetry throughout this. A lot of the music is quite important. Also, just some other those like some Rousseau, Leonardo da Vinci thing, and also it parallels with a lot of like the historical events at the time, and sort of goes through these moments in Soviet history that you might not necessarily think are that explicitly linked to what's going on with the plot, but when you kind of sit and reflect on it, I think that really...
reflect?
Oh.
Yeah, what does a mirror do?
Oh my God.
That's the name of the film.
It is the name of the film.
Damn. I just think everything that... Even what's seemingly throwaway moments that, you can appreciate on an aesthetic level, but you might not necessarily think are that important to the plot. I think that really... it builds upon this sense of reflecting on a life, reflecting again, and and all these moments are so entangled and kind of like sporadic, where you can't really separate them, but it's all coming together to build this like greater depiction of something.
It's wild. I loved. They showed a lot of stuff to do with the rise of like the Chinese Communist Party, and I was like, I wonder if this is so we can get away with critiquing a government that isn't the Soviets, because obviously they wouldn't let them release that. So I thought that was fun, and there was a specific one that really got me, where I think it was all of the people being evacuated or something, because that was quite like tragic, because it was all just people being pulled apart from their families, not people being pulled apart, pulled away from their families, and all the footage kind of worked. It worked like very intentionally as well, because I think it's like, even though it's got this dream-like meander through things, you can feel that it's been edited very meticulously, because there's things like when Alexei mentions, if Ignat doesn't do well in school, he's going to get drafted, maybe some war or doing some good or whatever. And I think it's immediately after that we get the orphan boy going through army training. Which that like child actor was really good. I felt terrible for him.
Yeah,
he was so sad. He was like just a sad Russian boy. Not like, also probably I couldn't tell if he was being annoying or if he was genuinely like, but about face does mean to turn all the way around in Russian.
3 360 no scope.
It was. And then, but with him on the hills while everyone was sledging, and then the bird comes over and sits on his head, like it's looking after him because both of his parents died at Leningrad.
It just feels like there's a lot of this film is underpinned by military and political turmoil that isn't always in the forefront, but I think that is almost a reflection of this childhood's lack of understanding, where these forces are very prominent in their lives, but it's this lack of expression almost, and a lot of this is obviously from a sort of childhood perspective, where they're just kind of victimized, but not necessarily fully able to comprehend it.
And there's lots of things mentioned about childhood in it, which is because I didn't really pick up on that, but I picked up on the thing where one of the characters literally said this, where they say like they're about yearning to be a child because everything was possible, everything was ahead of them. So there's quite a lot to do with the children like not really understanding what's around them, but because of that they think that they could do anything, and it's kind of both very hopeful and tragic in the same way, because obviously they can't do anything, but they've got that hope and that drive where there's a lot of things about like kids dreaming about things they could do. There's like this can be very subtle, like one of the scenes which was, this is more a quirk of me, but which was the most stressful scene for me, where one of the kids, which was maybe Ignat, maybe Alusha or whatever, I couldn't tell which one, but one of the kids played by that boy, where he's flicking through like an art book, clearly because he's like amazed and in awe of this. Maybe he's thinking about doing it in the future, maybe he's just starting to appreciate art, whatever. He's a kid. And then, but the reason it was really stressful for me is because he could not turn those thin pages. He did it twice where he tried to turn them and got a crease all the way along, and it was like in the same place twice. I was like, how can you not just please pull the page out straight? It's gonna get destroyed. And I know that there was a lot of stuff going on, but that really stressed me out. Why couldn't they teach him to turn a page properly?
I'm sure it's intentional.
I think that was the guilt that the 40-year-old man was feeling.
Definitely.
He was like, oh, I didn't teach him to turn the pages of that book, and it's got creases in. Look, one of the pages was already torn. That's probably his doing.
I think it was just a generally really interesting depiction of childhood, because as you're saying, that there is that degree of freedom and optimism you have in childhood, but I don't think that was necessary. Some films depict that, not that this is a fault, but as like excessively, I'd say. But this was kind of it did have that, but at the same time there was all this stuff going on, like with the father and all the tension there, where he did feel the like positives of childhood, but it wasn't necessarily there was still all that the guilt that shone through and permeated every moment of their lives. And then when you have the whole thing about the mother and the wife, the parallels there, I just thought it was like a really, really interesting look into how childhood shapes your later years.
One of my favourite scenes is one that I actually don't understand at all. Like genuinely, I have no idea what the meaning is. I don't even really know what happened, but I just loved it. Which is where it is Ignat. Okay, I think it is specified that this Ignat is left in the apartment by himself, and then the camera kind of moves away, and then pans back, and there's suddenly a table there, and there's two women. One seems to be this kind of older grandmother figure, and one's younger, and they start telling him to read out from a book. I can't actually remember what book it is, and he's kind of reading out, and then they just talk about. I can't remember what.
Was that the letter?
Yes,
it was a letter from some point in the 1800s to something to do with war, I think.
Yeah, and I can't even remember what it said, but it was like really quite a striking thing to get him to read out.
Yeah,
and then they kind of someone appears at the door or someone knocks and they're like, aren't you going to go get it? And then he goes to get it and it's someone that's like, oh, sorry, wrong apartment.
Yeah.
And then he goes back and they've suddenly gone.
Yeah.
But they've what's left is like the condensation from the heat of the teacup, because it showed the teacup at one point, it lingered on it, and I was like, why is it doing that? And then later it comes back to the table that's there. And this music starts like slowly building with this terrifying thing as the condensation disappears. And it was like this, I don't know, it felt really tragic because it seemed to me to be maybe about the like impermanence of memory, because that's one of those moments where there's no mention of it later, there's no record of it ever happening, because like how could you say that the only record is like his memory, and you can kind of see the memory just gradually fades away, that any mark that's happened. And for some reason that was like, oh, I don't know.
Is that the one that's immediately followed with a phone call with his father where he like mentioned someone coming to the door?
Yeah, he mentioned someone coming to the door, but not the two women there. Yeah.
I just really enjoyed the constant feeling of uncertainty that really, like, it put me on edge, but in a way that, you know, it was clearly intentional, and I think really was what it was going for, and it enhanced the experience. It was like a pleasant...
Bless you.
Yeah, it was like a pleasant unpleasantness almost.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting using colour and black and white seemingly at random, but it turns out Tarkovsky actually had an interview a few weeks before the movie came out, and he said the black and white things, the black and white scenes is when it's objective, and the colour when it's in colour, it's subjective. So when Cillian Murphy's in, I mean, I think I might have got confused actually.
Oh no!
Maybe. I think my memory's going. Oh no! I think, Ollie, every time I think of my mum, you just got your face.
Yo!
Help! What's happening to me?
Anna?
I've got a sick tum. I don't actually know why there were black and white and colour scenes.
No.
But it was cool.
It was cool. And that seems...
Because at first I was like, oh, this is memory, this is dream, and this is reality. But then I was like, no idea.
Because if you compare it to some of his other stuff, the majority of Stalker is in colour, right? Apart from the opening and the ending.
Yeah.
And then it's similar in Andrei Rublev, where pretty much the whole film is in black and white, and then you have a very brief moment at the ending which shows a lot of his artwork, and that's all in colour. I've no idea what any of those mean, but it's worth noting that he does like to play with that kind of stuff.
And not even just the use of colour versus like black and white. It's also like, you know, Stalker had that really distinctive washed out aesthetic from like the nuclear fallout. Whereas some of the colour scenes in this were like really vibrant.
They were so vibrant. I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful.
Yeah,
It really is.
I was expecting dreary black and white Russian.
So was I. That's how I kind of went into it with Stalker in my head.
Yeah.
And you know, I know some of it was in black and white. It's kind of a bit harder to sort of wash out black and white. I mean, you can do it, but it's not as immediately obvious. But it's just like, you know, some of the color scenes, it was like he just turned the saturation or the contrast or whatever just really like up.
That ending scene, it just looks incredible.
It does, yeah.
And I think that it felt like, to me, the opening scene was there almost the way that was shot with this, like, I think it was one like side view black and white shot, and you can like see their shadows and stuff, which is like really weird. Like, I'm sure it's lit deliberately, but it's not like nice to look at. And then immediately after, you get these beautiful nature shots, and you're like, "Oh my God, whoa!" So it felt like maybe it was partially to do with the mood of different scenes. But yeah, the ending at the end, I saw an interesting thing say about like there's a lot to do with nature versus man within it. I don't know how true that is, because it was saying they were kind of two opposing forces, which I didn't really get, because to me it felt like the things with nature were almost, I don't know, they were more interconnected with the people in it. It didn't feel like there was much of a versus point, but there was a thing of like the last scene, which is apparently the woman, whichever character she is at that point. I think Alexi's wife. I can't remember what her name. Marusha, I think that's his wife. There is someone called Marusha that she plays.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know character names at the best of times. Never mind in this film.
Yeah.
It's all the same actors.
Yeah, and then she sees herself as a grandmother, and she's walking with these two kids, and then like they gradually get obscured by the trees, which is again, which they took as a man versus nature thing. To me, that was more similar to the disappearing condensation of the teacup.
Yeah, it's more the interconnectedness than the opposition of it, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, there is mention of. Thank you. Of Rousseau, who a lot of his philosophy was about the politics of man in nature and then out of nature, and like that return to the natural form. But I didn't really pick up on that too much. I think that there was a scene earlier on with the fire in the house. Maybe that was like a.
That's possible.
But yeah, I don't know if that.
I forgot about that.
prominent.
But yeah, because that was interesting of just kind of being like, oh, kids, there's a fire for us to look at. But then like later, there's maybe that ties in with the guilt where he feels like he was oftentimes just watching.
Yeah, exactly.
Things crumble around
It's like
him.
that helplessness of childhood that then kind of extends into adulthood. And I think what's interesting is with the deathbed at the end. Which character was that?
That's Alexei, who's the one that is often not seen.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because they obscure his face even on the actual bed itself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if that. I have heard that apparently this is semi-based around Tarkovsky's actual life experiences, partly. So I don't know if the choice to do that is almost a projection of his own experiences onto this, so he can kind of, use this film as an expression of some of his own guilt, perhaps. But then again, I'd need to know more about his own life and whether that would be the case, because of all like the different characters, all the stories, kind of. I don't know. Maybe
It does seem to be a very personal film for him, because those interludes with poetry that was obviously, well, not obviously. I'm going to tell you this if you haven't. I've researched it for 2 minutes online, like we did.
Oh,
So yeah, the poetry was by his own father, and it was read by his father, and his mother played the old woman.
at the end, or the one that was having the tea, or are they the same? I don't think they were the same.
Definitely the one at the end.
Okay.
They could have been the same woman. I don't know. I was literally 2/3 asleep while watching this, which made the whole dreamlike experience a lot more dreamlike.
Yeah, it was an interesting kind of meander through where you could kind of go, ooh, because it was similar to, or almost similar to the ending of Mulholland Drive, like the last segment of that, where you're kind of going through all these, in fact, all of Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, but I
you're
think
kind of meandering through these scenes, and you're not entirely sure how it's piecing together until right towards the end.
yeah.
And it's kind of got that same like strangely unsettling feeling.
Definitely the unsettling feeling and the meandering sort of structure of it, I think, are very similar than the two. But I think where they differ is that Mulholland Drive almost makes an effort to have everything neatly connect, and it always has like a feel of I don't know. It's kind of like scary, some of the aspects when you like piece it together, and how it all connects to like this idea of the Hollywood dream and the optimism of the main character. Whereas this, I think it doesn't necessarily try and wrap everything up nicely,
No.
and that's almost a more accurate depiction of dreams, memories, and like, reflections and of life in general. So I think they do definitely share a lot in common, but I think the approach does vary to an extent.
Yeah,
in
definitely.
like
Yeah,
what they were
just-
going for.
It was interesting seeing, like, you know, because this was 1975, and you're like, this has completely changed. Like, I can easily see the huge influence it's had on like cinematography alone.
Yeah.
Obviously, those kind of slow but deliberate moving shots, which are now everywhere's doing long takes and like these interesting camera moves and stuff like that.
Apart from Mile 22.
Apart from longest takes in the game, Mile 22. What are you on about? But it's things like that. Even a Ghost Story, which last week, it's very similar structure to that. I'd say.
It was interesting. I was chatting to you before the podcast, and you kind of compared it to a Ghost Story, and you'd said that you'd got a much more hopeful message from this film.
I think. Well, I'd say much more. Like, thinking back on it, maybe not as much, but it feels. I'd say it's not hopeful, but it feels more accepting. There's a lot of acceptance within this of the kind of. It presents time as this everything. All interconnected, like there's little separation between past, present, and future, and it has this almost strange sense of immortality that it mentions. There's a speech about it of that things do go on. Like, for me, there was a lot of things about you are always part of a story. There's some story that you're affecting and altering. Obviously, whether that be good or bad, which it was bad for the main character who's massively weighed down with guilt, but there's so many interconnecting stories, I think, was the main thing I got, because there's all these different time periods are linked by specific things and affect each other, and there's this sense of a kind of universal progression and story, which I felt just seemed less nihilistic. And there was more appreciation, because obviously there is a lot about reflecting, and you could tell that there was a lot of things to do with appreciating beauty within the moment, and like there are nice moments in this. There's obviously a lot of weird, unsettling, dark stuff.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's almost like those nice moments amplify this feeling of regret, because they only exist in memories, and I think a lot of the acceptance that you talked about is still very, very tragic. Because it is a man coming to terms with the end of his life and trying to relive these moments that he feels this immense guilt towards. But I don't know if this is maybe just what I took out of it, but it wasn't as if the guilt was necessarily the most obvious in a lot of the sort of vignettes we were shown. It was more so you could definitely feel it more than you could describe it, if you know what I mean. You could feel this sense of guilt underpinning everything, but it wasn't necessarily like there were, you know, maybe a less good film would have bits that you could point to, like, oh, this is where this happened that caused that. But this was more so just the emotion of guilt that sort of permeated it all, and I think that was a way more effective way of doing it in terms of just the subtlety of the film and the way it was very dependent a lot of the time on its visual components, and a lot of the cinematography and the music and whatever sort of acted as the backbone to convey sort of that indescribable guilt.
Yeah, it wasn't even show don't tell. It was more kind of feel. Don't
Yeah, exactly.
Show.
Ooh, sounds saucy. But
And that's why I think Tarkovsky is just one of the best directors ever, because his films very much are so only really work in a cinematic medium, and they do a really good job in conveying those feelings without you necessarily being able to describe why or how.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of that those comments. So that this film should be free for you to watch on YouTube, like legally.
Because it's I think it's the studio have released.
I think so. So I was obviously reading some comments, And I think one of the top ones was describing it as a cinematic poem, and I think that's a really good way of describing it, because it's not so much a film for entertainment's sake or a story's sake or anything.
Is it a film for excellence sake?
Yes, it is. It is. In fact, you know what? For my point, it is a film for excellence sake, because poetry is excellent.
Ooh.
Oh, wow!
You heard it here first, folks.
Wow, we're gonna do a poem next week.
Yeah.
That's one thing we've not done. We've done a lot of other.
I mean, we're going to review a poem or just like say one?
Review a poem. We
Yeah.
could say one if you want.
Yeah.
If this hits how many downloads for us to write an E of E poem and recite it. One. No, we've got to have more.
Well,
than
we had
just
10
us.
streams on our podcast last week, which isn't particularly great. But given we'd been gone for however many months, I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
We'll say if it hits 20 streams, we'll do one line of a poem.
Yeah, do a line.
40 streams, 2 lines.
Oh.
Oh my god! So yeah, that's
And we'll give you 4 lines for 60.
share
Oh,
it.
that's a
Share it to
bargain.
your friends then, because I'm gonna say you're gonna want more than one line if you want to hear the rhyme scheme, because it's an interesting one.
But what if we do like an Eminem style thing where it's like every other word rhymes?
Well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
Ooh.
But yeah, share this with your friends so that you can hear the E of E poem, which will have amazing symbolism, as good if not better than Mirror.
Oh, yeah.
And your minds will be blown.
We'll do Tarkovsky proud.
We will. He'll be so happy.
He'll
know.
be like crying in his grave.
But in the past as well, because it's all connected.
He is crying in his grave. He
Oh.
was crying in his grave.
Oh my god,
And he will be.
that's deep.
That is deep.
Speaking of deep, let's just segue to a completely unrelated point of
You're just gonna say, speaking of deep, and try
I was
and get
gonna,
away
I was
with
gonna,
it.
I was gonna try and get us to give it ratings.
Speaking of deep,
Speaking of deep, how deep do you think our ratings should be?
wow. I was gonna say, speaking of Tarkovsky crying in his grave, what should we rate this?
2 meters.
2 meters. That's a pretty good depth.
It's
Ratings.
6 feet under,
Yeah, that's why I said 2. Yeah, I agreed.
but the metric system is better.
So take that.
Take that, Tarkovsky.
I know, because they used a weird measurement thing, didn't they? Because they mentioned the town being. Do you remember when they were with the woman where they killed the chicken, and then she was like, "But the nearest town is 15 blanks away."
Oh,
and I was
yeah.
like, "What? 15
Oh, yeah.
what?" I'd never heard of that measurement in my life, so I was like, "I'm really interested to know what it is." Not enough to note down what they said, but I wish I'd noted down what it is. So okay, ratings.
Speaking of measurements,
Oh, there we go.
See, there we go.
Yeah.
Ben.
Well
there
done.
we go. We're on it now. Who shall I go first? Seeing as I'm like because I've given up on doing extremely precise.
He's sticking
2
to
decimal
the.
point.
Oh.
all right, okay,
Reviews.
you go on the less precise side, and we'll make it more precise for you.
You can mold it.
We will.
I think, to be fair, I have a feeling this could be one where my rating improves over time after I've studied on it, because I've actually really enjoyed talking about all the stuff in it. I think the only thing that hampered it is that I did feel its length a bit. Like there were times that I was like, I'm feeling a tad bored, but not often. Especially not, I think the film does what it wants really well. This series of vignettes, and it does them in a beautiful way. Links together well, and like really, really cool. Loved all the themes and symbolism, and you kind of. It's almost like you grow to understand the characters and the world they're in, but in a less direct way than a lot of other films, which I really appreciated. So I'm going to give this one an 8.000 out of 10.
Oh.
So
3
that's
decimal
3
points.
decimal
That sounds
places.
ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, see, it's an interesting one because I feel like it's another film that you need to be in the right headspace to watch. I kind of wasn't in any headspace to watch it. I was really tired, but I enjoyed it. It was good, but I can imagine myself trying to rewatch it at some point and not in the right headspace and just be like, it drags a bit and I'm not really getting it because of. But that is kind of how it's designed. Like you were talking about, like how the fast-paced lifestyle is good to kind of like sit back and reflect. And if I was in such a reflective mood, it would be a really good, really thought-provoking piece. So as much as I want to be annoying and go to a really precise decimal point, I don't think I can justify that because of how much my review of it would vary depending on my mood. So unfortunately, I'm also going to have to go as an 8.000.
Oh, you said not precise, but you went to 3 decimal places there.
Oh,
Precise for me.
Oh, okay. Fair.
yeah, I definitely see what you mean, and I think if you measure your enjoyment on how much you kind of understand something, and you want everything to like be this neat little story that you get all of, then you're probably not going to enjoy this very much, because I don't think that is really its objective or is really like fully achievable. But I think it's one where I definitely want to revisit to pick up some more of the stuff he's doing throughout it, and I think I might go a bit higher actually, because I did really enjoy this. I think I'm going to go at 8.4.
Oh,
whoa!
wow.
0.
Oh,
I thought you were going to go a bit higher at 8.0001.
1.
Yeah, I know. I really liked it. I think it is one that I could probably watch whenever. I think I would have given it a higher rating if I was more. If I like cried or something,
Yeah.
But this gave me a feeling of that no other film has really given me, where I just felt nourished. Do you know what I mean? I was watching this, and I'm like, oh, I feel really full.
I get that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm feeling very emotionally nourished at the moment.
It's like it's very thought provoking and everything, and by the end of it, it's an hour and 45, which by film standards is kind of about normal length.
Yeah, middling.
Tarkovsky standards, it's a bit short.
Yeah. It's really it's an hour shorter. Than normal.
But there are sections that purposefully go on a bit long, which I don't think is a bad thing, but I think it does contribute to that thing of like, oh, I've watched a lot of film.
Yeah, but I think this is a film I really want to watch in like 20 years' time.
And reflect on your own
and then
life.
It could become like, then I watch it again in 20 years' time, and it becomes like this. It could become this touchstone, but for now,
it's because of all the time that it covers. I think it would definitely be one that'd be interesting to see how your opinion changes as you grow and experience more stuff. But
tell you what, we'll redo it as our 1000th podcast.
We're on 161 already, are we?
We are, yeah.
Really? Oh no, yeah, I forgot about that.
But even though it isn't incredibly long, I definitely see what you mean, because you can watch some films like the new Spider-Verse, for instance. That's like considerably longer than this.
Yeah,
almost 2.5 hours. Or Goodfellas, but they absolutely fly by. Whereas this, it was so like emotionally dense, and there was so much going on. But I don't think it necessarily had a moment where it was like a tearjerker, because it wasn't. It definitely wasn't like emotionally manipulative, but even more so than that, it wasn't. I think just the inability to fully express certain things about it kind of prevented it from having that one defining moment where you felt like really sad, or it was just kind of this feeling throughout that lingered, and ebbed and flowed a bit, but it wasn't like there was a huge emotional climax.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's interesting because I think The thing that I would compare it to is like 2001. Ending of that, I had no idea what was going on, and I cried. But
Yeah.
but that is, you're right, that is a very concentrated section.
Yeah.
Of it, where there's a clear emotional climax, even if you don't know what's happening. Which
Yeah,
I didn't.
exactly.
But I was still like extremely moved. But this is more spread out, which is I think what I was on about feeling nourished throughout, where you kind of, it's this constant
Yeah, it's very constant.
feeling, which is interesting. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if my rating ever changes. Maybe I'll watch it in 20 years and I'll just hate it. I'll be like, what is this drivel? What is this crap?
We'll have to see episode
Well,
1000.
Then
Yeah.
you'll have to remake it.
I'll have to remake it myself. All I'll do is I'll just film it in a mirror and then I'll be like, this is really deep actually.
Remake it in a mirror, but like flip all the colours. So like the
Invert the colours.
No.
Oh, make the
like
coloured scenes black and
yeah,
white and the
yeah.
black and white scenes in colour.
And
Okay.
to really reflect the point.
that could be cool.
Speaking of the point of this podcast is to get you to like it on Spotify, give us a 5-star review, and follow us on Instagram. And oh god,
You can give a 5-star review in any app, Ben. Or, well, not any app, but there's lots of apps you can give a 5-star review. Sometimes you can write as a 5-star review.
you
I would probably read that out.
Apple Podcasts, you can write us a 5-star review, which would be cool.
Oh, yeah, we'd probably read that one out. I think if we got a 5,
Especially if it's a poem.
especially if you do as a 5-star review and it's a poem, we'll
And
read
if
that
you
out.
give us a 1-star, we'll also read that out.
And if you're thinking, I've already forgotten what rating they gave this movie, you can go to entertainmentofexcellence.weebly.com and you can check out our ratings of the most recent episode. And we've also got Hall of Fame of the rating of every episode, and you can see our individual ratings.
That is
You've got everything you need
incredible.
on
Cool.
there, and the socials. We've
At
got
EOV Podcast on TikTok.
and Instagram. Is it at EUV Podcast on Instagram as well?
It
yeah.
is.
Can they email in? I can't remember if we do that. Yes.
I mean, you can. I mean, no one ever has, but you can if you want.
which is entertainment. That's entertainment of excellence
At gmail.com.
at gmail.com. Okay.
There you go.
Or you
I
can use the
remember.
contact form on the website.
Exactly. So that, yeah, there's all the plugs. Anyway,
Also, I don't know if we ever actually mentioned this since we've come back. Our Kangaroo Jack episode has hit over 1,000 views, which is like so weird. But like, if any film was to hit 1,000 views, of course it'd be Kangaroo Bloody Jack.
Kangaroo Jack is probably our best episode.
It's what we're known for.
It is. I think honestly that was the peak of like
Peak of
the
EOV.
second phase of EOV. Like,
We're synonymous with Kangaroo Jack, and Kangaroo Jack is also synonymous with us.
Yeah,
Like,
people
no one
can't see
thinks
it.
of that film without thinking of
Exactly.
our faces.
yeah, exactly. My that image of us in the old EOV studio with me with Jackie Legs. It's just you can't think of Jackie Legs and not think of me.
No,
Exactly.
it's impossible.
That's the whole thing. But we've noticed we've got I think 3 dislikes on that, which is like, come on, at least write us a hate comment. Come on.
Constructive criticism, Ben.
Exactly.
Even deconstructive criticism. Come on, give us some hate mail. Go for it.
Yeah. Right. So we move on to the next section, which is our
It's time for recommendations.
recommendations. I forgot about that jingle.
Yeah.
Is that the first time we ever actually
Oh, I think it
done
is.
Is it-
Welcome to a groundbreaking episode of EOV where we had our first jingle.
I bought
really is.
recommendations.
These little barbershop harmonies. It's really cool that.
Feels like it needs a little button at the end, like a
Mm.
something. It's time
Yeah.
for recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I've actually done anything.
Neither have I.
Have I even watched like a good YouTube video? I don't know. What
The
have I
Kangaroo
done?
Jack episode. Have
Oh,
you
I watched that about 1,000 times, I think.
Good.
So
Oh, good.
oh, that might
Did
explain
you dislike
something.
it 3 times as well?
I did. Oh, it's all
Oh,
making
no.
sense now. I think one interesting thing I guess I could say is there's this YouTube channel called Almost Friday TV that does like really good sketch for the amount of subscribers they have, like very well produced, which I'm surprised at. Some of the sketches I'm kind of met on, but there's some really good ones. that are very funny, and they've got some. I don't know. They're odd folks, and I'm excited to see what they end up doing. They have really interesting ones about just terrible people at parties. There's like been a couple. There's one where they trap. Like the sketch basis is that you start talking to this guy and he won't shut up, but the way that they convey that is that you literally get trapped in like the Stranger Things void. Well, so it's just you in this black space as this man is just talking to you and you can't get out. That's one of my favorite. That's one of the first ones I watched. And there's also ones of like, if you scroll too far back in Instagram, but then it goes into the Hurt Locker and it's like a bomb defusal squad and trying to get back to the top without accidentally liking a post from 10 years ago. There's some great stuff.
Nice.
And the most recent one is trying to hide the fact that you're having a party to a guy that you really didn't like at the last party. It's just normal stuff that then gets like, for some reason, extremely intense and over the top. So yeah, watch them. Some good stuff.
Epic.
Cool.
Do you have anything?
Oh, I don't know.
Well,
I'll have a think. You go.
Well, last week we did. What was it called? A ghost story. Yeah. And I said that.
What was it called? It's a story about a ghost.
Oh no, I'm getting as bad as you.
Like me going, what are the characters in Malcolm and Marie?
And that was on that I said I was going to watch The Green Knight.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't.
So you can't recommend it.
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't think I liked it. Not as much as Ghost Story, I wouldn't say. But it definitely had like a lot of cool shots. I just felt that a lot of it was like very meandering to the point where it kind of felt like not much was going on. And I get that's what it was going for. I really did enjoy the ending. But I think there's a large chunk in the middle that is quite slow. Yeah. I do think you have to be in the right frame of mind to just like take in the shots and everything. And it definitely has like a very cool, fantastical element to it with all the world building and the strange creatures they encounter along the way. Well, he encounters. Yeah. But and yeah, as I said, I think it wraps up pretty well.
Is there a certain rag, or have I been misled?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
that's a great scene. it kind of felt like a Robert Eggers film, but not as good.
All right.
But Robert Eggers is one of my favorite like current directors, so it's hard to live up to him.
Oh. What else has he done other than The Lighthouse? I can't remember.
Well, he did The Witch and then The Northman.
Oh, that's it.
Oh,
yeah.
The Northman is really, really good if you haven't watched that. It gave me similar vibes to this. Although that one's more of a revenge tale, and this was, well, it's a classic like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight thing. But yeah, I think I'd still recommend it if you want to watch some cool shots.
And I do like, I've already forgotten his name, the lead man.
Yeah, the guy from Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah, is it Dev Patel?
Yeah,
cool. He's good.
He is good. He hasn't been in a lot of stuff, but he's good in what he's in.
Oh, he's in Lion, which is really good.
All right.
And there's someone else really famous in it that I've forgotten. But yeah. Anything, Ben?
So the only thing I've really watched recently, I mean, I know I can do other forms of media, but I haven't really done much of them either. The only thing I've really watched recently that I would recommend is Fantastic Mr. Fox, the movie.
Oh, I need to watch that again.
Which I watched it once when I was about 10 when I was ill, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if I was just in a really bad like frame of mind or something, because my recollection of it was a bit boring and it dragged, and like I rewatched it and I was like, no, it doesn't. It's like really, really well done, and it doesn't drag in the slightest. It's like I mean, it's been even more years since I read the book, but I rewatched it. I just like everything from like the book and you know, obviously the original film, it's all just coming back, and it was just, I don't know, it was just like a really nice nostalgia trip, like for me personally. I was like, oh my god, Boggis Bunsen Bean, the farmers, and then the little rhyme, Boggis Bunsen Bean, one short, one fat, one mean.
Yeah.
This horrible crooks, the different looks was also unbelievably mean.
Oh, like, nice.
Really cool.
Oh, one short, one fat, one lean.
Lean, yeah. But
Nice.
yeah, it's also really well done. It's stop motion animation, I think, and it's.
Have you seen Isle of Dogs?
I haven't.
That's the same animation
I
style.
want to
So,
watch that now after seeing this.
I want to watch Fantastic Mr. Fox again because I think I also saw it when I was about 10.
Yeah, I
And,
rewatched it a couple of weeks ago, and it really holds up well.
I've been
It
watching
does.
a few more Wes Anderson stuff, and that's.
Yeah.
I mean, I've technically watched it, but yeah, I want to watch it again.
Yeah, it's one of its best, I'd say.
Yeah, it's
Ooh.
been the same. It's been the same with me. I mean, I still haven't seen Asteroid City, but like I have
You should.
been rewatching. And watching some of his other stuff. So I will be watching Asteroid City soon.
Cool. Well, is that the show?
That would appear to be the show.
No, it's a film.
Oh,
I think it's still out in cinemas.
is it time for the catchphrase that I remember now?
Nice.
Yes.
Time for the catchphrase. This entertainment has been so excellent. All right, see ya.
All right, see ya.
All right, see you.
Presented by Ollie Luff, Thom Sweeney, and Ben Stinson. Music by Thom Sweeney and Ben Stinson. Audio engineered by Ben Stinson at Longwater Productions. All Right See Ya, created by Al Wright, Sr. All rights, brackets, see Ya, close brackets, reserved.